The rain hammered down like bullets from heaven, and Logan Yates could barely see 5 feet ahead through the storm as he urged his horse forward along the muddy trail. But then he heard a sound that made his blood run cold, the desperate, broken sobbing of a woman somewhere in the darkness ahead. He pulled hard on the reins, his massive frame tensing as he strained to listen over the pounding rain. There it was again. A cry of despair that cut through the storm like a knife. Logan had spent the better part of 8 years alone in these California mountains, trapping and hunting, avoiding civilization and all its complications. He had learned to mind his own business, but something about that sound reached into his chest and squeezed his heart until he could not ignore it. His horse, a sturdy bay mare named Copper, seemed to sense his urgency. He kicked her gently and they moved forward through the deluge, water streaming down his weathered face and soaking through his buckskin jacket. His long dark hair was plastered to his neck and shoulders, but he barely noticed the discomfort. Every muscle in his powerful body was focused on finding the source of those cries. When he rounded the bend in the trail, he saw a covered wagon tilted at a strange angle, one wheel buried deep in the mud. But it was not the wagon that made him curse under his breath. It was the woman chained to the wheel itself, her wrists bound in iron shackles, her body curled against the wooden spokes as if trying to find shelter from the merciless rain. Her dress was torn and muddy, her dark hair hanging in wet ropes around her face. Logan dismounted in one fluid motion, his boots hitting the mud with a splash. He was a big man, standing well over 6 feet tall, with shoulders broad enough to carry a full-grown deer and arms thick with muscle from years of hard mountain living. His hands, calloused and strong, had torn through solid pine to build his cabin and had wrestled bears that wandered too close to his trap lines. Now those hands clenched into fists as rage flooded through him at the sight before him. Who would do such a thing? What kind of monster would leave a woman chained out here in a storm like this? He rushed toward her, his heavy footfalls splashing through the pooling water. The woman looked up at the sound, her eyes going wide with fear. She pressed herself harder against the wagon wheel, and Logan realized she was terrified of him too. Of course she was. He was a stranger emerging from the darkness, a mountain of a man with a wild appearance that probably looked more beast than human. "Please!" she gasped, her voice raw from crying. "Please, do not hurt me!" Logan stopped a few feet away, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm not going to hurt you, miss. I'm here to help. Who did this to you?" She stared at him for a long moment, her chest heaving with panicked breaths. Her eyes were the color of storm clouds, gray and haunted. Even covered in mud and shaking with cold, Logan could see she was beautiful. Young, too, probably no more than 20 or 21. His protective instincts roared to life, fierce and immediate. "My uncle," she finally whispered. "He left me here." "Your uncle?" Logan felt his jaw clench so hard his teeth hurt. "Where is he now?" "Gone. He rode off hours ago. Said I was not worth the trouble of keeping anymore. Said he hoped the wolves or the weather would take care of me so he would not have to." Her voice broke on the last words, and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks, mixing with the rain. Logan moved closer, kneeling in the mud beside her so he could examine the chains. They were thick iron shackles, the kind used for prisoners, locked tight around her slender wrists and secured to the wagon wheel with a heavy chain. He tested the lock, but it held fast. There was no key in sight. "What is your name?" he asked, trying to keep his voice gentle despite the fury burning in his gut. "Zara. Zara Coleman." "Well, Zara Coleman, my name is Logan Yates, and I give you my word that I'm going to get you out of these chains. Do you understand me?" She nodded, her eyes searching his face as if trying to determine whether she could trust him. Logan met her gaze steadily, letting her see the sincerity there. After a moment, some of the fear in her expression eased, replaced by a fragile hope. "How?" she asked. "The lock is strong, and there is no key." Logan looked at the chains again, then at his own hands. He had broken iron before, rusted traps, old tools, bent horseshoes. But this was different. This was thick, well-made iron. Still, he had to try. He could not leave her here, and he had no tools with him to pick the lock or file through the metal. "I'm going to try to break them," he said. "It might take a few tries, and I will not lie to you, it might hurt when the metal shifts. But I will be as careful as I can." Zara bit her lip and nodded. I trust you. Those 3 words did something strange to Logan's heart. He could not remember the last time anyone had said them to him, could not remember the last time anyone had looked at him with anything other than fear or suspicion. Mountain men like him were not known for their social graces. They were rough, wild, dangerous. But this woman, this fragile creature who had every reason to fear men after what had been done to her, was choosing to trust him. He would not let her down. Logan gripped the chain between her wrists with both hands, wrapping his fingers around the cold iron links. He took a deep breath, feeling the familiar surge of strength that came from years of hard labor and survival in the wilderness. His muscles bunched and tensed as he began to pull, applying steady pressure. The chain groaned but did not give. Zara watched him with wide eyes, her lips parted in amazement as she took in the sheer power in his arms and shoulders. Logan gritted his teeth and pulled harder, the cords in his neck standing out with the effort. His hands ached and his knuckles went white, but he kept pulling. With a sharp crack that echoed even through the storm, one of the iron links suddenly snapped. Logan stumbled backward, catching himself before he fell. Zara gasped, staring at the broken chain in disbelief, but her wrists were still locked in the shackles. Logan moved to the chain that connected her to the wagon wheel, examining it more closely. This one was thicker, secured to the wheel with a heavy iron ring. He would need more leverage. Hold still, he told her, positioning himself to get a better grip. This time he braced one boot against the wagon wheel for support and wrapped the chain around his wrists, using his entire body as a lever. Every muscle in his back and shoulders screamed in protest as he pulled with all his strength. The rain continued to pour down on them both, but Logan barely noticed. All his focus was on that chain, on breaking it, on freeing this woman who had been left to die by her own family. His hands throbbed, and he felt something warm and wet blood, probably from where the iron was cutting into his skin, but he did not stop. With a grinding, shrieking sound of metal under impossible stress, the iron ring began to bend. Logan roared with the effort, pouring every ounce of his strength into one final pull. The ring snapped with a sound like a gunshot, and suddenly Zara was free from the wagon wheel. She collapsed forward, and Logan caught her, his strong arms going around her trembling form. She was so cold, her whole body shaking violently from hours in the freezing rain. The shackles were still on her wrists, connected by a short length of broken chain, but at least she was no longer tied to the wagon. I have got you, Logan murmured, pulling her close against his chest. You are safe now. Zara clung to him, her fingers digging into his jacket as if she was afraid he might disappear. She was crying again, but these tears seemed different, tears of relief, of gratitude, of overwhelming emotion. Logan held her carefully, aware of how small and fragile she felt in his arms despite his own immense size. We need to get you warm and dry, he said after a moment. My cabin is about 5 miles north of here. Can you ride? Zara pulled back slightly to look up at him, and for the first time, Logan saw her face clearly despite the rain. She was more than beautiful, she was striking, with high cheekbones and full lips and those incredible gray eyes that seemed to look straight into his soul. Something shifted in his chest, a feeling he had not experienced in so long he barely recognized it. I do not know, she admitted. I'm so cold I can barely feel my legs. Logan made a decision. Without asking permission, he scooped her up into his arms as if she weighed nothing at all. Zara gasped and instinctively wrapped her arms around his neck, the broken chain dangling between them. What are you doing? She asked. Taking you home, he replied simply, carrying her to where Copper waited patiently in the rain. The horse was used to Logan's unusual behavior and did not shy away as he approached with his burden. Getting them both mounted was tricky, but Logan managed it through sheer determination. He settled into the saddle first, then carefully positioned Zara in front of him, cradling her against his chest with one arm while he held the reins with the other. She fit perfectly there, tucked into the shelter of his body, and Logan found himself wondering how he had ever thought he was content being alone. The ride to his cabin took longer than usual because of the storm and the darkness, but Logan knew these mountain trails like the back of his hand. He kept Zara wrapped tight against him, trying to share his body heat with her, murmuring occasional words of reassurance when she trembled particularly hard. By the time they reached the cabin, Zara had stopped shivering quite so violently. but Logan could tell she was in bad shape. He dismounted first, then lifted her down with careful hands. She swayed on her feet and he steadied her, one arm around her waist. "Just a little further," he encouraged, guiding her toward the door. The cabin was small but sturdy, built with his own hands from strong pine logs. It was not much, but it was warm and dry and safe, everything Zara needed right now. Logan pushed open the door and ushered her inside, then quickly lit a lamp. The golden light revealed a single room with a stone fireplace on one wall, a rough-hewn bed in the corner, a table and 2 chairs, and various shelves holding supplies and tools. Furs and pelts hung on the walls for insulation, and the whole place smelled of wood smoke and pine. "Sit by the fire," Logan instructed, pointing to a chair he dragged closer to the cold hearth. "I will get it lit." Zara sank into the chair without protest, her teeth chattering. Logan worked quickly, his skilled hands arranging kindling and logs, striking flint until a spark caught. Within minutes, flames were crackling cheerfully, casting dancing shadows around the room. Only then did Logan turn his full attention back to Zara. She was staring at the fire as if mesmerized, her whole body still shaking. Her dress was plastered to her skin, and Logan realized with concern that she would never get warm unless she got out of those wet clothes. "Miss Coleman," he said carefully, "I know this is awkward, but you need to get out of that wet dress or you are going to catch your death. I have some spare clothes you can wear. They will be too big, but they are clean and dry." Zara looked up at him, and he saw her cheeks flush with embarrassment. But she nodded, understanding the practical necessity. "All right, but the chains—" Logan had almost forgotten about the shackles still locked around her wrists. He knelt beside her chair, examining them more closely in the firelight. They were secured with small but sturdy locks. He would need tools to remove them properly without hurting her. "I will have to file them off," he said. "But first, let me get you warm. Wait here." He moved to a trunk at the foot of his bed and pulled out one of his own shirts, a soft flannel that would hang on her like a dress in a pair of thick wool socks. When he turned back, Zara was trying unsuccessfully to work the buttons of her dress with her shackled hands. "May I?" Logan asked, keeping his voice gentle. She hesitated, then nodded. Logan moved behind her chair, trying to ignore the way his pulse quickened as he carefully worked the small buttons free. He was acutely aware of the smooth skin of her neck, the delicate curve of her shoulders. He kept his touch professional, his movements efficient, but there was no denying the attraction he felt. When the dress was unbuttoned, he handed her the shirt and turned his back to give her privacy. "Tell me when you are decent." He heard rustling sounds, a small gasp that might have been pain or discomfort, and then finally, "You can turn around now." Logan turned to find Zara wrapped in his flannel shirt, which indeed hung on her small frame like a dress, reaching past her knees. She had somehow managed to pull on the wool socks as well. Her wet hair hung in tangles down her back, but her skin already looked less blue-tinged in the firelight. "Better?" he asked. "Much, thank you." She met his eyes, and Logan saw something soften in her expression. "You're very kind, Mr. Yates." "Just Logan is fine." He moved to another shelf and retrieved a small metal file. "Now let me see about getting those shackles off you." He pulled the other chair close to hers and had her rest her wrists on his knee. The position put them in close proximity, and Logan caught the scent of her, despite the rain and mud, something floral and sweet. He bent his head over his work, using the file to carefully work at the metal around the lock mechanism. "How long have you been out here?" Zara asked quietly. "In these mountains?" "About 8 years." "That's a long time to be alone." Logan shrugged, not looking up from his task. "I prefer it that way. People are complicated. Mountains are not." "What brought you out here?" He was quiet for a moment, the only sound the scraping of the file against iron. "The usual," he finally said. "I did not fit in back east. Too wild, too rough. Got in one too many fights, broke one too many rules. Figured I would rather take my chances with grizzly bears than with so-called civilized folks." "I understand that feeling," Zara said softly. "Not fitting in, I mean." Logan glanced up at her, curiosity getting the better of him. "Your uncle left you chained to a wagon wheel. I think you have earned the right to elaborate on that if you want." Zara's expression turned haunted again. "My parents died of cholera when I was 17. My uncle was my only living relative, so I went to live with him in Sacramento. He seemed kind at first, But then he started drinking heavily, lost his job, lost his money, started seeing me as a burden rather than family. So he decided to leave you to die? Logan's voice was hard with anger. He said he was tired of feeding me, said I was useless because I refused to. She stopped abruptly, her cheeks flushing. Refused to what? Logan prompted, though he had a feeling he knew where this was going. There was a man, a friend of my uncle's. He offered my uncle money if he could. She could not finish the sentence, but she did not have to. Logan's hands stilled on the shackle, his jaw clenching so hard he thought his teeth might crack. Your uncle tried to sell you. It was not a question. Zara nodded miserably. I refused. I fought. I said I would rather die than let that happen, so my uncle said he would grant my wish. He chained me to the wagon wheel and left me out in the storm. That is not a man, Logan growled. That is a monster. The first shackle finally gave way with a satisfying click. Logan carefully removed it from Zara's wrist, which was raw and bleeding underneath. He cursed softly at the sight. I'm going to kill him, he said flatly, already starting work on the second shackle. No, Zara said quickly, her free hand coming to rest on his arm. The touch sent an unexpected jolt through Logan's system. Please, no, I do not want you to get in trouble because of me. I just want to forget he exists. Logan looked into her eyes and saw the plea there. He did not like it. Every instinct in his body was screaming for violence, for vengeance, but he forced himself to nod. All right, but if he ever comes near you again, all bets are off. Deal, Zara said, and there was the tiniest hint of a smile on her lips. The second shackle took another 10 minutes of patient work, but finally it too clicked open. Logan removed it gently and set both pieces of iron aside with obvious distaste. Then he took Zara's hands in his own, examining her injured wrists in the firelight. These need to be cleaned and bandaged, he said. I have some salve that will help with the healing. He released her hands and went to fetch his medical supplies, a small kit he kept for dealing with his own various injuries from hunting and trapping. When he returned, he knelt before Zara's chair and began carefully cleaning the wounds with water he had warmed by the fire. Zara hissed at the initial sting, but did not pull away. She watched Logan work with an expression of wonder on her face. Why are you being so kind to me? She asked. You do not even know me. Logan paused in his ministrations, considering the question. Why was he being so kind? It went beyond simple human decency. There was something about this woman that called to something deep in his soul, something he had thought long dead. Because you deserve kindness, he said finally, because what was done to you was wrong, and because... He trailed off, not sure how to put it into words. Because, Zara prompted gently. Because I have not felt this strongly about anything in 8 years, Logan admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. The moment I heard you crying out there in the storm, something in me just knew I had to find you, had to help you. Their eyes met and held. The air between them seemed to crackle with sudden tension, not the dangerous kind, but something else, something warm and promising. Zara's lips parted as if she wanted to say something, but no words came out. Logan forced himself to look away, focusing on finishing the bandaging. When both her wrists were wrapped in clean white cloth, he sat back on his heels. There. That should help them heal. Thank you, Zara whispered, for everything, for saving my life, for bringing me here, for taking care of me. I do not know how I will ever repay you. You do not owe me anything, Logan said firmly. He stood, suddenly needing some distance before he did something foolish like pulling her into his arms and never letting go. You are safe here. That is all that matters. He moved to the small kitchen area and began pulling out supplies for a meal. You must be hungry. When was the last time you ate? Yesterday morning, I think. Maybe the day before. I lost track of time. Logan shook his head grimly and set about making a simple stew from dried venison and vegetables from his stores. As he worked, he was acutely aware of Zara watching him from her chair by the fire. He had never been self-conscious about his appearance or his way of life, but now he found himself wondering what she saw when she looked at him. Did she see a savage, a brute, or did she see the man beneath the rough exterior? The stew did not take long to prepare. Logan ladled out 2 bowls and brought them to the table, along with some hard bread he had traded for at a settlement a few weeks back. Zara rose from her chair by the fire and joined him, moving stiffly as if every muscle in her body ached. Careful, Logan warned, pulling out a chair for her. "You're going to be sore for a few days." "I already am," Zara admitted with a rueful smile. "But it is a good kind of pain. The pain of being alive." They ate in companionable silence for a while. Logan watched with satisfaction as color slowly returned to Zara's cheeks, and she began to eat with more enthusiasm. She had been through hell, but she was a survivor. He could see that strength in her even when she was at her most vulnerable. "This is delicious," Zara said after finishing nearly the entire bowl. "I did not realize how hungry I was." "There is more if you want it." She shook her head. "I am full. Thank you." She looked around the cabin again, taking in the details she had missed in her initial shock and exhaustion. "Have you really lived here alone for 8 years?" "I go into town every few months to trade furs and supplies," Logan said. "But yes, mostly alone. Do you not get lonely?" Logan considered the question. Before tonight, he would have said no. He had convinced himself that he preferred solitude, that he did not need anyone. But now, sitting here with Zara in his cabin, the firelight casting warm shadows over her face, he realized how empty his life had been. "I thought I did not," he said honestly. "But maybe I was just lying to myself." Zara's expression softened. "I know what it is like to feel alone even when you are surrounded by people. My uncle's house was full of his drinking friends, but I have never felt more isolated in my life." "You are not alone anymore," Logan said, the words coming out more intense than he had intended. "I meant what I said earlier. You are safe here." "But I cannot stay here forever," Zara pointed out, though her voice held a note of regret. "Can I? You have your life, your solitude. I have already disrupted that enough." "You are not a disruption." Logan reached across the table and took her hand without thinking, his large, calloused fingers engulfing her small bandaged ones. "Zara, listen to me. You can stay here as long as you need, as long as you want. I do not know what the future holds, but I know I am not going to turn you out into the cold to fend for yourself." Zara's eyes were suspiciously bright. "You barely know me." "Then we will get to know each other." Logan squeezed her hand gently. "That is how it works, right?" A laugh escaped Zara, surprising them both. It was a rusty sound, as if she had not laughed in a very long time, but it was genuine. "I suppose it is." They stayed like that for a moment, hands clasped across the rough wooden table, the fire crackling behind them. Logan felt something settle in his chest, something that had been restless and unsatisfied for as long as he could remember. It was as if a missing piece had suddenly clicked into place. Eventually, practical concerns reasserted themselves. "You need rest," Logan said reluctantly, releasing her hand. "Take the bed. I will sleep by the fire." "No," Zara protested. "I cannot take your bed. You have already done so much." "Zara." Logan stood, his full height and breadth making it clear that arguing was futile. "You are injured, exhausted, and you have been through hell. You are taking the bed. That is not negotiable." She looked like she wanted to argue further, but seemed to think better of it when she saw the determination in his eyes. "You are very stubborn, Logan Yates." "So I have been told." He moved to the bed and pulled back the furs that served as blankets. "Come on. The sooner you rest, the sooner you will heal." Zara rose slowly from the table and made her way to the bed. She sat on the edge, running her hand over the soft furs. "These are beautiful. Did you trap all of these yourself?" "Over the years, yes, mostly beaver and bear." "You hunted bears?" She looked at him with a mixture of admiration and alarm. Logan shrugged. "Only when they got too close to the cabin or tried to raid my supplies. I do not hunt for sport, only for necessity." Zara lay back on the bed, her dark hair spreading across his pillow. Logan tried not to think about how right she looked there, how much he wanted to lie down beside her and hold her through the night. Instead, he pulled the furs up to her chin and stepped back. "Sleep," he commanded gently. "I will be right here if you need anything." "Logan?" Zara's voice was drowsy, her eyes already half closed with exhaustion. "Yes?" "Thank you. For being my miracle in the storm." Logan felt his throat tighten with emotion. He reached out and brushed a strand of damp hair away from her face, his touch gentle despite his rough hands. "Sleep well, Zara." Within minutes, her breathing had evened out into the deep rhythm of sleep. Logan stood watching her for a long moment, marveling at the strange turn his life had taken in just a few hours. This morning he had woken up alone, as he had for the past 8 years, with no expectation that anything would change. Now there was a woman in his bed, a woman he had pulled from the jaws of death, a woman who stirred feelings in him he had thought himself incapable of feeling. Logan finally tore his gaze away and moved to the fireplace. He added more wood to keep the flames going through the night, then arranged some furs on the floor to make a bed for himself. It was not as comfortable as his actual bed, but he had slept in worse places. As he lay down and closed his eyes, listening to the rain still drumming on the roof and the soft sound of Zara's breathing, Logan made himself a promise. He would protect this woman with everything he had. He would keep her safe from her uncle, from the world, from anything that tried to hurt her. And if these strange, intense feelings he was having for her grew into something more, well, he would face that when the time came. For now, it was enough to know she was here, safe and warm in his cabin, and that tomorrow was a new day full of possibilities he had never dared to imagine. Logan woke with the gray light of dawn filtering through the cabin's single window. The storm had passed during the night, leaving behind the clean, fresh smell of rain-washed earth. He lay still for a moment, remembering the events of the previous night and wondering if he had dreamed the whole thing. But no, there was Zara still curled up in his bed, sleeping peacefully beneath the furs. The sight of her made his chest feel tight in a way he could not quite explain. Logan rose quietly, not wanting to wake her. He stoked the fire back to life, put water on to boil, and stepped outside to tend to Copper. The horse had spent the night in the small lean-to he had built as a shelter and seemed none the worse for wear. "You are a good girl," Logan murmured, running his hand down her neck. "Brought us home safe last night, did you not?" Copper whickered softly and bumped her nose against his chest. Logan smiled one of his rare, genuine smiles and fetched her some oats from his stores. When he returned to the cabin 20 minutes later, Zara was awake and sitting up in bed, looking adorably rumpled and confused. Her eyes found him immediately, and he saw relief wash over her features. "I thought maybe I had dreamed you," she said softly. "No dream," Logan confirmed, moving to the fire to check on the water. "How are you feeling?" "Sore, stiff, but better than I have any right to feel after yesterday." She swung her legs out of bed, wincing slightly. "My wrists still hurt." "That will take a few days to heal properly. Let me change those bandages after breakfast." Logan made real coffee, not the chicory substitute he usually settled for, and prepared a simple meal of fried salt pork and cornbread. Zara joined him at the table, still wearing his oversized flannel shirt, her hair a wild tangle around her shoulders. "We should do something about that dress of yours," Logan said as they ate. "Get it cleaned and dried or see if we can salvage it." Zara shook her head. "I never want to see that dress again. It reminds me of—" She trailed off, but Logan understood. "I will take you into town in a few days," he decided. "Get you some proper clothes, some things of your own." "Logan, I do not have any money. My uncle took everything." "Did I ask if you had money?" Logan's voice was gruff but not unkind. "Consider it repayment for the coffee. I rarely make the real stuff for just myself." Zara smiled at that, a real smile that lit up her whole face and made Logan's heart do strange things in his chest. "In that case, I accept. Thank you." After breakfast, Logan carefully changed the bandages on Zara's wrists. The wounds looked better in the daylight, angry and red, but not infected. He applied more of his homemade salve, which contained herbs and plants he had learned to use during his years in the mountains. "This smells interesting," Zara commented, wrinkling her nose. "What is in it?" "Bear grease, pine resin, and a few other things. It works better than anything you can buy from an apothecary." "I believe you. My wrists feel better already." As the morning wore on, Logan found himself acutely aware of Zara's presence in his cabin. She was not intrusive or demanding, quite the opposite. She seemed content to simply exist in the space, watching him work as he went about his daily tasks of checking his traps and preparing pelts. "Can I help with anything?" she asked eventually. Logan looked up from the beaver pelt he was stretching. "You should rest." "I've been resting. I want to do something useful." There was a note of determination in her voice that Logan was beginning to recognize. Zara Coleman might have been through hell, but she was no fragile flower. "All right," he conceded. "Can you sew?" "Of course." He rummaged in a chest and produced some buckskin and a bone needle with sinew thread. "I need a new hunting shirt. Mine has more holes than fabric at this point. If you can manage it with your wrists—" "I can manage," Zara said firmly, taking the materials from him. She settled by the window where the light was best and began to work, her fingers moving with practiced ease despite the bandages. They worked in companionable silence for a while, the only sounds the crackling of the fire and the occasional call of birds outside. Logan found himself sneaking glances at Zara, admiring the way she bent over her work, the concentration on her face, the graceful movement of her hands. "Tell me about your life before you came to the mountains," Zara said suddenly, breaking the silence. "You said you came from back east?" Logan was quiet for a moment, his hands still working on the pelt. He did not usually talk about his past, but something about Zara made him want to open up. "Boston," he finally said. "I grew up in Boston. My father was a shipbuilder, wanted me to follow in his footsteps. But I was never any good at sitting still and doing what I was told. Got into fights, ran with a rough crowd, broke my father's heart probably. Do you miss them? Your family? My father died before I left. My mother remarried a man who made it clear I was not welcome in her new life. I had a sister, but I do not know if she is still alive. I have not had contact with anyone from that life in nearly a decade." "I'm sorry," Zara said softly. "That must be hard." Logan shrugged. "I made my choices. No point in dwelling on them now." He paused, then added, "What about you? What was your life like before your parents died?" Zara's expression turned wistful. "We lived in San Francisco. My father was a school teacher. My mother took in sewing work. We were not wealthy, but we were happy. They encouraged me to read, to learn, to think for myself. When they died, it felt like my whole world collapsed." "And then you went to your uncle." "Yes, and we both know how that turned out." She looked down at the buckskin in her lap. "Sometimes I wonder if I should have just accepted what he wanted. Maybe I would have been better off—" "No." Logan's voice was sharp, cutting her off. He set aside the pelt and moved to crouch beside her chair, his blue eyes intense as they met hers. "Do not ever think that. You did exactly the right thing by refusing. What he tried to do was evil, and you were right to fight back. Do you understand me?" Zara stared at him, her eyes wide. "I understand," she whispered. "But Logan, I came so close to dying. If you had not found me. But I did find you." He reached up and cupped her face gently in his large, rough hand. "I found you, and you are safe now. That is all that matters." The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken emotion. Logan became aware of how close they were, of the warmth of her skin under his palm, of the way her breath had quickened. He should pull away, he knew. It was too soon, too fast. She had been through trauma, and he should not be taking advantage. But then Zara did something unexpected. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his, her eyes closing. "I'm so grateful you found me," she whispered. "I was praying for a miracle, and then you appeared out of the storm like some kind of guardian angel." "I am no angel," Logan said roughly, but he did not pull away. "Maybe not, but you are my miracle nonetheless." They stayed like that for a long moment, foreheads touching, breathing the same air. Logan felt something crack open in his chest, something that had been locked away for years. He had been alone for so long, had convinced himself he did not need anyone, did not want anyone. But now, with Zara's warmth and trust offered so freely, he realized how wrong he had been. He did need this, need her. Finally, reluctantly, Logan pulled back. "You should finish that shirt," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "Otherwise, I will be walking around half naked all winter." Zara laughed, the sound like music in the small cabin. "We cannot have that. You would freeze." Logan returned to his work, but the atmosphere in the cabin had shifted. There was an awareness between them now, an acknowledgement of the attraction that had been building since the moment he first saw her. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. The days that followed fell into a comfortable rhythm. Logan continued his work of trapping and hunting, but he found himself staying closer to the cabin than usual, reluctant to leave Zara alone for long. She seemed content to stay inside, working on his new shirt and helping with simple tasks around the cabin. Her wrists healed quickly under Logan's care. Within a week, the wounds had scabbed over and the angry redness had faded. She no longer needed bandages, though faint scars remained as reminders of what she had endured. Logan noticed other changes, too. The haunted look in Zara's eyes gradually faded, replaced by a cautious hope. She smiled more readily, laughed at his dry observations about mountain life. Color returned to her cheeks and she began to move with more confidence. She was beautiful, Logan thought. Not just physically, though she was certainly that, but in the way she carried herself, in her resilience, in her capacity for joy, despite everything she had been through. He was falling for her, hard. It scared him more than facing down a grizzly bear ever had. One evening, about 10 days after he had found her, Logan came back from checking his trap lines to find Zara had prepared dinner. It was nothing fancy, just venison stew and cornbread, but the gesture touched him deeply. "You did not have to do this," he said, genuinely surprised. "I wanted to," Zara replied, ladling stew into bowls. "You have done so much for me, Logan. Let me do something for you." They sat down to eat, and Logan had to admit the stew was even better than his own attempts. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" "My mother taught me. She said a woman should know how to make a good meal from whatever ingredients she had on hand." Zara's expression grew sad. "I miss her terribly sometimes." "Tell me about her," Logan encouraged. "What was she like?" Zara's face lit up as she spoke about her parents, sharing memories of her childhood in San Francisco. Logan found himself captivated by her stories, by the obvious love she had for her family, by the way her whole demeanor changed when she talked about happier times. "Your turn," Zara said eventually. "Tell me something about your childhood, something good." Logan had to think about that. Good memories from his childhood were few and far between, but finally one surfaced. "My father used to take me fishing sometimes before he got too caught up in the business, just the two of us out on the water at dawn. He did not talk much, but he did not have to. Those mornings were peaceful." "You miss him," Zara observed. "I do. I wish I had been a better son, done things differently, but I cannot change the past." "None of us can," Zara said softly. "We can only move forward." Their eyes met across the table, and Logan felt that pull again, that magnetic attraction that seemed to grow stronger every day. He wanted to reach for her, to pull her into his arms, to kiss her, until neither of them could breathe. But he held back, afraid of moving too fast, afraid of scaring her away. After dinner, they sat by the fire, as had become their habit. Logan was working on repairing a trap while Zara did the final stitching on his new shirt. The domesticity of the scene was not lost on him. This is what it could be like, he thought. This easy companionship, this shared space, this feeling of home. "Logan?" Zara's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Yes? What will happen when winter comes? I assume winters here are quite harsh." Logan nodded slowly. "They are. Snow can get deep, temperatures drop below freezing. Sometimes I do not leave the cabin for days at a time." "And you want me to stay? Through the winter?" There was vulnerability in her question, as if she was afraid of his answer. Logan set aside his work and looked at her directly. "Zara, I want you to stay as long as you want to be here. Winter, spring, summer, fall, it does not matter to me. Unless you want to leave." "No." The word came out quickly, almost desperately. "No, I do not want to leave. I wanted to make sure you wanted me here." "I want you here," Logan said, and the truth of those words resonated through his entire being. "More than I have wanted anything in a very long time." Zara set aside the shirt and stood, moving to where Logan sat. She knelt beside him, her gray eyes searching his face. "I am glad," she whispered, "because I want to be here. With you." Logan reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. "Zara, I need you to understand something. I am not a civilized man. I do not know how to court a woman properly, do not know the right words to say, but what I feel for you, it is real, it is powerful, and it scares the hell out of me." "Why does it scare you?" Zara asked, leaning into his touch. "Because I could hurt you. Not intentionally, but I am rough and wild, and I do not always know my own strength. Because you deserve better than a mountain man with a violent past and no prospects. Because—" Zara silenced him by placing her fingers against his lips. "Logan Yates, you listen to me. You are the kindest, bravest, most honorable man I have ever met. You saved my life when you did not have to. You have treated me with nothing but respect and gentleness, despite what you claim about being rough and wild. And as for deserving better, no one could be better than you." Logan's throat felt tight. He turned his face to press a kiss to her palm, his eyes never leaving hers. "You are making it very difficult for me to keep my distance," he admitted roughly. "Then do not keep your distance," Zara breathed. "Logan, I am not fragile. I am not going to break, and I want to be close to you." That was all the permission Logan needed. He pulled Zara onto his lap in one smooth motion, his arms coming around her. She fit perfectly there, her head tucked under his chin, her body soft and warm against his. "Is this all right?" he murmured against her hair. "This is perfect," Zara replied, wrapping her arms around his neck. They stayed like that for a long time, simply holding each other, listening to the crackle of the fire and the night sounds outside. Logan felt something settle in his soul, a peace he had not known he was missing. This woman in his arms, she was his home now, more than any physical structure could ever be. Eventually, Zara pulled back just enough to look up at him. Her eyes were soft and warm in the firelight, her lips slightly parted. Logan knew he should resist, should be a gentleman, but when she tilted her face up in clear invitation, he was lost. He kissed her gently at first, almost reverently, afraid of overwhelming her. But Zara made a small sound in the back of her throat and pressed closer, her fingers tangling in his long hair. Logan deepened the kiss, one hand coming up to cup the back of her head, the other splayed across her lower back. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. Zara's eyes were bright, her cheeks flushed, and Logan thought he had never seen anything more beautiful in his life. "I've been wanting to do that since the day I met you," he confessed. "I've been wanting you to," Zara replied with a shy smile. "I was beginning to think you never would. I was trying to be respectful, give you time to heal. I appreciate that. But Logan, I am healed enough to know what I want. And I want you." Those simple words sent heat flooding through Logan's veins. He kissed her again, longer this time, tasting her sweetness, feeling her respond with equal passion. His hands roamed her back, careful not to be too rough, but unable to resist touching her. Finally, with more willpower than he knew he possessed, Logan pulled back. "We should stop," he said raggedly, "before I lose all control." "What if I do not want you to stop?" Zara challenged, her eyes dark with desire. "Zara," Logan's voice was strained, "I'm trying to do the right thing here. The right thing is what we both want." She cupped his face in her hands. "Logan, I'm not asking for anything you are not ready to give, but I need you to know that I want this. I want you, not because you saved me or because I owe you anything, but because of who you are." Logan groaned, pressing his forehead against hers. "You are making this very difficult." "Good," Zara said with a hint of mischief that made him smile despite everything. They compromised by spending the rest of the evening wrapped in each other's arms by the fire, sharing kisses and quiet conversation. When it was finally time for bed, Logan insisted Zara take the bed again while he made his pallet by the fire. "This is getting ridiculous," Zara complained. "That cannot be comfortable." "I have slept in worse places," Logan assured her. "Now go to sleep." "You are very stubborn." "So you have said." But as Logan lay down by the fire that night, listening to Zara's breathing even out from the bed, he could not help but smile. For the first time in 8 years, he was not alone. For the first time in his entire life, he had someone who saw past his rough exterior to the man underneath, and he was falling in love with her. The realization should have terrified him. Instead, it filled him with a sense of rightness, of inevitability. Zara Coleman had stumbled into his life in the middle of a storm, and somehow she had become the center of his entire world. Logan did not know what the future held. There were still practical concerns to address. Zara needed proper clothes, they would need to prepare for winter, and there was always the threat of her uncle returning. But those were problems for tomorrow. Tonight, he would simply be grateful for the gift he had been given, a second chance at life, at connection, at love. The next morning dawned bright and clear, the mountains dressed in the vibrant colors of autumn. Logan woke to find Zara already up, standing by the window and looking out at the view. "It is beautiful here," she said when she noticed he was awake. "I have never seen anything like it." Logan rose and joined her at the window, standing close enough that their shoulders touched. "I take it for granted sometimes. Being out here so long, you stop seeing it." "Then I will remind you to see it," Zara said, leaning against him. "I will remind you of all the beauty that surrounds you." Logan wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "I think you already are," he murmured, and she smiled. After breakfast, Logan made a decision. "We are going into town today. You need proper clothes, and I need to trade some furs. It is a good day for the ride." Zara's expression turned anxious. "What if my uncle is there?" "Then I will deal with him." Logan's voice was hard. "But Hangtown is a decent-sized settlement, Zara. The chances of running into him are small, and you cannot hide here forever, no matter how much I wish I could keep you all to myself." "All right," Zara agreed, though she still looked nervous. "But promise me you will not do anything rash if we do see him." "I promise to try," was all Logan would commit to. They prepared for the journey, Logan packing furs to trade, and Zara wearing his spare clothes, a shirt and trousers that she had to roll up multiple times to fit. She looked adorable in his too large clothes, and Logan had to resist the urge to kiss her senseless before they left. The ride to Hangtown took about 3 hours. Zara rode in front of Logan on copper again, and he was acutely aware of every place where their bodies touched. She seemed more relaxed than she had that first terrible night, leaning back against his chest and pointing out things she noticed along the trail. "What is that bird?" she asked at one point, gesturing to a large bird circling overhead. "Red-tailed hawk. Good hunters. And those trees. Ponderosa pines. The bark smells like vanilla if you get close enough." Zara turned to look at him over her shoulder, her eyes dancing with amusement. "You know a lot about these mountains." "I should. I've spent enough time here." "I like learning from you. Tell me more." So Logan found himself talking about the plants and animals, the weather patterns, the best places to fish and hunt. Zara listened with genuine interest, asking intelligent questions, and Logan realized he was enjoying himself. When was the last time he had enjoyed simple conversation with another person? Hangtown, California, had been named for its rough justice in the early days of the gold rush, though it had since become more civilized as the 1870s rolled on. It was still a rough frontier town, but it had a general store, a saloon, a church, and even a small schoolhouse. Logan tied copper outside the general store and helped Zara dismount. She looked around with wide eyes, taking in the bustle of activity. It was nothing compared to San Francisco, but it was a lot more people than she had seen in the past 2 weeks. "Stay close to me," Logan instructed, his protective instincts on high alert. He kept one hand on the small of Zara's back as they entered the store. The proprietor, a middle-aged man named Samuel Hastings, looked up from his ledger and his eyes widened when he saw Logan. "Well, I will be damned. Logan Yates. I was beginning to think you had died up in those mountains." "Not yet, Sam." Logan approached the counter, guiding Zara with him. "I need to do some trading, and the lady needs some clothes." Sam's curious gaze moved to Zara, and Logan saw the exact moment the older man noticed the fading marks on her wrists. To his credit, Sam did not comment directly. "I have some ready-made dresses in the back, and some fabric if the lady wants to make her own. Name is Samuel Hastings, miss. Everyone calls me Sam." "Zara Coleman," she replied softly. "Pleased to meet you, Mr. Hastings." "Just Sam, please. Any friend of Logan's is welcome here." Sam moved toward the back of the store. "Let me show you what I have got." While Zara looked at dresses with Sam's help, Logan conducted his trading. He had brought several high-quality beaver pelts and a magnificent bearskin, all of which Sam examined with a practiced eye. "These are good quality, Logan. I can give you a fair price." They negotiated for a few minutes before settling on an amount that satisfied them both. Logan took some of the payment in goods he would need for winter salt, flour, coffee, ammunition, and the rest in cash to pay for Zara's clothes. "The lady with you," Sam said casually as he wrapped Logan's purchases. "She in some kind of trouble?" Logan's jaw tightened. "She was. Not anymore." "Good," Sam nodded approvingly. "You let me know if there is anything I can do to help. This is a rough country, but we look after our own out here." "I appreciate that, Sam." Zara emerged from the back of the store, wearing a simple blue calico dress that fit her much better than Logan's borrowed clothes. She also carried several other items, another dress, a wool shawl, some undergarments that made Logan look away quickly, and sturdy boots. "How do I look?" she asked with a self-conscious smile. "Beautiful," Logan said honestly, and was rewarded by the way her cheeks flushed pink. They completed their business and were loading their supplies onto Copper when Logan heard a voice that made his blood run cold. "Well, well, look what we have here, my dear niece, alive and well after all." Logan spun around to see a man approaching them, middle-aged, unshaven, with the red nose and bleary eyes of a habitual drunk. Zara went pale, her hand clutching Logan's arm. "Uncle Frank," she whispered. Frank Coleman looked his niece up and down with an expression that was part surprise, part anger. "I do not know how you got free of those chains, girl, but you are still mine. You are coming back with me." "Like hell she is," Logan growled, stepping in front of Zara protectively. Frank's gaze shifted to Logan, taking in his considerable size and obvious threat, but the man was either too drunk or too stupid to back down. "This is none of your business, mister. That is my niece, my responsibility." "Your responsibility?" Logan's voice was dangerously quiet. "Is that what you call leaving her chained to a wagon wheel in a thunderstorm, trying to sell her to your degenerate friend?" Frank's eyes narrowed. "She told you that, did she? I'm sure she did not mention how she disrespected me, refused to be grateful for all I did for her." "You left her to die," Logan interrupted, his hands clenching into fists. He was acutely aware of people starting to gather, drawn by the confrontation. "You chained her up like an animal and left her to die because she would not let you sell her like a piece of meat. You have no proof of that. It is her word against mine." But Frank's bravado was faltering in the face of Logan's barely controlled rage. "I have got proof," Logan said coldly, and he reached back to gently take Zara's wrist, displaying the fading but still visible scars from the shackles. "I have got the scars from the chains you left her in. I have got the dress she was wearing, torn and covered in mud. And I have got my testimony that I found her half dead in the middle of a storm." The crowd murmured, and Logan saw several faces turn angry as they looked at Frank Coleman. In frontier justice, there were few crimes worse than abandoning family, especially a woman under your protection. Sam Hastings stepped out of his store, taking in the scene. "Is this true, Logan? This man left his own niece to die?" "It is true," Logan confirmed, his eyes never leaving Frank. "And I'm going to make sure everyone in this town knows what kind of man Frank Coleman is." Frank's face flushed an ugly red. "You cannot prove anything. And even if you could, she is still my legal responsibility until she marries." "Then I will marry her," Logan said, the words coming out before he could think them through. But as soon as he said them, he knew they were right. "Today, if possible. Then she will be under my protection, not yours." The crowd erupted in approval, but Logan was focused on Zara. He turned to look at her, suddenly worried he had overstepped. "Zara, I'm sorry. I should not have said that without asking you first, but I meant it. If you will have me, I will marry you and keep you safe from him forever." Zara's eyes were bright with tears, but she was smiling. "Yes," she said clearly, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Yes, I will marry you, Logan Yates." Logan felt something sore in his chest. He pulled Zara into his arms, holding her tight, and the crowd cheered. When he looked back at Frank Coleman, the man's face had gone from red to white. "You cannot do this," Frank sputtered. "She is not of age." "I'm 21, Zara called out, her voice stronger now. "I'm of legal age to marry without your consent." "The parson is in his house next to the church," Sam Hastings announced helpfully. "I'm sure he would be happy to perform a ceremony today, and I would be honored to stand as witness." "As would I," added a woman from the crowd, stepping forward. She was older, perhaps 50, with kind eyes. "I am Martha Green, miss. Welcome to Hangtown." Things moved quickly after that. Frank Coleman tried to protest further, but several men from the town escorted him away, making it clear his presence was not welcome. Logan and Zara were swept along to the small house beside the church, where Parson Whitfield greeted them with surprise and delight. "A wedding! How wonderful! Let me just get my book." The parson was a young man, probably only in his 30s, with an earnest expression. "Do you have rings?" Logan had not thought that far ahead, but Sam Hastings appeared at his elbow. "I've got some at the store. Simple bands, but they will do the job. Consider them a wedding gift." "Sam, I cannot—" "You can and you will," Sam said firmly. "Now go on. Do not keep your bride waiting." Within an hour of Logan's impulsive proposal, he found himself standing before the parson with Zara at his side. She had changed into her new blue dress, and Martha Green had helped her fix her hair, weaving some late-blooming wildflowers into the dark strands. She looked beautiful, and Logan's heart was pounding so hard he thought everyone must be able to hear it. Dearly beloved," Parson Whitfield began, and Logan tried to focus on the words. But all he could think about was Zara's hand in his, small and warm and trusting. Was he really doing this, getting married after knowing her for less than 2 weeks? But then he looked at Zara and saw the love shining in her eyes, and all his doubts evaporated. This was right. This was meant to be. Do you, Logan Yates, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do," Logan said firmly, his deep voice carrying through the small room. "And do you, Zara Coleman, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do," Zara said, her voice clear and strong. Sam handed over the ring's simple gold bands that somehow fit perfectly. Logan slid one onto Zara's finger, his hands remarkably steady for how nervous he felt. Then Zara placed the other ring on his finger, and Logan stared at it for a moment, marveling at the symbolism. "By the power vested in me by the state of California and the Lord above, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Logan, you may kiss your bride." Logan cupped Zara's face in his hands and kissed her gently, aware of their audience but unable to resist. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling, and the small gathering erupted in applause. They signed the marriage certificate with Sam and Martha as witnesses, making it official. Logan and Zara Yates. The name sounded right, felt right. As they left the parson's house, now officially married, Logan felt as though he was walking on air. Martha Green had organized a small celebration at the saloon, just cake and lemonade, nothing fancy, but it was more than Logan had expected. The townspeople were warm and welcoming, congratulating them both and making sure Zara felt welcome in Hangtown. Several women offered advice, sympathy, and friendship, and Logan could see Zara starting to relax as she realized she had a community here, people who would look out for her. "You did good, Logan," Sam said, clapping him on the shoulder. "That girl needed someone to protect her, and you are about as protective as they come." "It is not just about protection," Logan admitted. "I love her, Sam. I know it is fast, but I really do love her." "I can see that, and she loves you too. Anyone with eyes can see it." Sam grinned. "Besides, sometimes the best things in life happen fast. You just have to be brave enough to grab hold when they come along." By late afternoon, Logan and Zara were ready to head back to the cabin. They had more supplies than they had come with, plus several wedding gifts from the townspeople, food, blankets, even a set of proper dishes from Martha Green. "You come back and visit now," Martha instructed Zara, hugging her warmly. "Do not be a stranger just because you are up in those mountains. We women need to stick together out here." "I will," Zara promised. "Thank you for everything." The ride back to the cabin was different from the ride into town. Now they were married. Logan was acutely aware of that fact, of what it meant, of what would happen when they got back to the cabin. He was not innocent. He had been with women before, but this felt different, more significant, more real. Zara must have been thinking along the same lines because she was quiet for most of the journey, though she leaned back against Logan's chest trustingly. When they were about halfway home, she finally spoke. "Are you sorry?" she asked softly. "That you married me so quickly?" "No," Logan answered immediately. "Are you?" "No, not at all." She turned her head to look up at him. "I love you, Logan. I know it has only been a short time, but I do. You saved me in more ways than one." "I love you too," Logan said, the words feeling natural despite how foreign they would have seemed just weeks ago. "From the moment I heard you crying in that storm, something in me knew you were important, that you were mine to protect." "I am yours," Zara agreed, "and you are mine." When they finally reached the cabin as the sun was setting, Logan helped Zara down from the horse and then simply stood there for a moment, looking at her in the golden light. His wife. This beautiful, brave woman was his wife. "Zara," he began, but she pressed her fingers to his lips. "Let us go inside," she said softly. "Let us start our life together properly." Logan needed no further encouragement. He swept her up into his arms, making her laugh, and carried her over the threshold of the cabin. Once inside, he set her down gently, and they stood looking at each other, the enormity of what they had done finally sinking in. I am nervous," Zara admitted. "Is that silly?" "No," Logan assured her, reaching up to cup her face. "I am nervous too. But we do not have to rush anything, Zara. We have all the time in the world." "I do not want to wait," she said, stepping closer to him. "I want to be your wife in every sense. I want tonight to be the start of our life together." Logan's breath caught. He leaned down and kissed her, pouring all his love and devotion into it. Zara responded with equal passion, her arms wrapping around his neck, pulling him closer. The kiss deepened, grew more urgent, and Logan felt his careful control start to slip. He pulled back just far enough to look into her eyes. "Are you sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything," Zara replied. What happened next was tender and passionate, slow and urgent all at once. Logan was careful with Zara, mindful of his greater strength, determined to make her first time something beautiful rather than painful. And Zara responded with a passionate trust that humbled him, giving herself to him completely. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the bed, the furs pulled up around them, the fire casting dancing shadows on the walls. Logan held Zara close, running his fingers through her hair, marveling at how his life had changed so completely in such a short time. "Are you happy?" he asked softly. "Happier than I ever thought I could be," Zara replied, snuggling closer. "This feels like a dream, like I'm going to wake up and find myself still chained to that wagon wheel." "You are not dreaming," Logan assured her, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "This is real. You are my wife, and I'm going to spend every day of the rest of my life making sure you know how loved you are." "I already know," Zara murmured, her eyes drifting closed. "I have known since the night you broke those chains with your bare hands and carried me home." Logan smiled, holding her as she fell asleep in his arms. His wife, his love, his reason for being. He had been alone for so long, had convinced himself he preferred it that way. But now he understood that he had just been waiting for the right woman, the right moment, the right storm to bring her into his life. As he drifted off to sleep with Zara warm and safe in his arms, Logan sent up a silent prayer of thanks. For the storm that had brought them together, for the strength to break those chains, for the courage to open his heart again, and for Zara, who had taken his rough, lonely existence and transformed it into something beautiful. The weeks that followed their marriage were some of the happiest of Logan's life. He and Zara fell into an easy partnership, working together to prepare the cabin for winter. Zara proved to be resourceful and hard-working, never complaining about the rough conditions or the hard labor involved in mountain living. She learned to preserve meat and vegetables, to tan hides, to chop wood and haul water. Logan taught her how to shoot, insisting she needed to know how to protect herself if he was ever away from the cabin. Zara proved to be a natural shot, her hands steady and her eye true. "You are full of surprises," Logan said admiringly, after she hit 3 targets in a row. "My father taught me," Zara explained. "He believed women should know how to protect themselves. My mother was scandalized, but I loved it." They talked for hours, sharing stories from their pasts, learning each other's likes and dislikes, building the foundation of their life together. Logan found himself laughing more than he had in years, Zara's quick wit and gentle humor bringing out a side of him he had forgotten existed. At night, they would lie in bed, wrapped in each other's arms, talking until sleep claimed them. Logan had never known such contentment, such peace. The loneliness that had been his constant companion for 8 years had vanished completely, replaced by a joy he had not known was possible. About 6 weeks after their wedding, Zara woke up one morning feeling ill. Logan was immediately concerned, hovering over her anxiously as she turned pale and rushed outside to be sick. "Should I ride for the doctor?" he asked when she came back inside, looking shaky. "No," Zara said, a strange expression on her face. "No, I do not think that will be necessary." "What do you mean?" You are clearly sick. Logan. Zara took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. I am not sick. At least, not in the way you mean. I think I am with child. Logan stared at her, his mind going blank with shock. You are. We are going to have a baby? I think so. The timing is right, and this morning sickness, my mother had it terribly with me. Zara bit her lip, suddenly looking uncertain. Are you happy about it? I know we have only been married a short time. Happy? Logan found his voice at last. He scooped Zara up and spun her around, making her squeal with surprised laughter. I am more than happy. I'm over the moon. We are going to have a baby. He set her down carefully, suddenly paranoid about being too rough. Should you be standing? Should you sit down? What do you need? What can I do? Zara laughed, placing both hands on his chest. Logan, calm down. I'm fine. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I'm not made of glass. I know, but... Logan took a breath, trying to collect himself. A baby. Our baby. He placed his hand over hers on her stomach. I'm going to be a father. And you are going to be wonderful at it, Zara said softly. I've seen how protective you are, how caring. Our child is going to be so loved. The news of the coming baby only strengthened the bond between them. Logan became even more protective, if that was possible, insisting Zara rest more and take on fewer physical tasks. Zara tolerated his hovering with good humor, though she occasionally had to remind him that she was pregnant, not dying. As autumn deepened into winter, the first snows came to the mountains. Logan had been right about the severity. The snow was deep and the temperatures bitter. But inside the cabin, with a fire roaring in the hearth and plenty of food laid by, they were warm and comfortable. The long winter nights gave them time to dream together about their future, about the baby who would arrive in the spring. They decided that if it was a boy, they would name him after Logan's father. If it was a girl, she would be named Sarah, after Zara's mother. Will you teach our children about the mountains? Zara asked one night as they lay in bed, the wind howling outside. About the plants and animals and how to survive out here? Of course, Logan replied, his hand resting on her slightly rounded belly. And you will teach them to read and write and think for themselves, just like your parents taught you. We're going to be a good family, Zara said with quiet confidence. I can feel it. Logan kissed her softly. We already are a good family. Winter eventually gave way to spring, and with the spring came new life. In late April, on a day when the wildflowers were just beginning to bloom in the high meadows, Zara went into labor. Logan had ridden to town a week earlier to ask Martha Green to come stay with them, knowing he would need help when the time came. Martha had agreed readily, packing up her things and moving into the cabin. She and Zara had become good friends over the winter months, with Logan making several trips to town so the women could visit. Now, as Zara labored to bring their child into the world, Logan paced outside the cabin like a caged animal. Martha had banished him, saying he was making Zara nervous with his worry. Men, Martha had said with fond exasperation, you can face down a grizzly bear, but you fall apart when your wife is having a baby. Go chop some wood or something useful. So Logan chopped wood, even though they had more than enough. He checked on the horses. He paced. He prayed, and he listened to every sound from inside the cabin, his heart in his throat. When he finally heard the thin, reedy wail of a newborn baby, Logan dropped the axe and ran for the cabin. He burst through the door to find Martha holding a tiny bundle, beaming with joy. Congratulations, Logan. You have a daughter. A daughter. Logan moved closer on shaking legs, peering at the impossibly small face peeking out from the blankets. She had a shock of dark hair and tiny, perfect features. As he watched, she opened her gray eyes like her mother's, and seemed to look right at him. Can I hold her? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. Of course. She is yours. Martha carefully transferred the baby to Logan's arms, showing him how to support her head. I will just check on Zara. She did beautifully. Logan barely heard her, completely captivated by the tiny life in his arms. His daughter, his and Zara's daughter. She was so small, so fragile, and yet Logan had never felt such fierce love in his entire life. Hello, little one, he whispered. I am your papa, and I promise you, right here and now, that I will always protect you, I will always love you, and I will do everything in my power to give you a good life." "Logan," Zara's weak voice called from the bed. He looked up to see his wife propped up on pillows, exhausted but smiling. Martha was tidying up, giving them what privacy she could in the small space. Logan moved to the bed and carefully sat down beside Zara, angling the baby so she could see her daughter. "She is perfect," he said, "just like her mother." Zara reached out to stroke the baby's cheek, her eyes filling with tears. "Sarah," she said softly. "Our little Sarah." "Zara Yates," Logan agreed, and the name felt right. He carefully transferred the baby to Zara's arms, watching as mother and daughter gazed at each other for the first time. Martha bustled over with food and water, making sure Zara was comfortable. "I will stay for a few days to help," she announced. "Make sure you are recovering properly and that this big lug does not fall apart completely." "I am not falling apart," Logan protested, though his voice was still thick with emotion. "Oh, of course not," Martha said with a wink at Zara. "Now I will leave you three alone for a bit. Get to know each other as a family." When Martha had stepped outside, Logan lay down carefully beside Zara on the bed, one arm around his wife, the other hand gently touching his daughter's tiny fingers. Sarah gripped his finger with surprising strength, and Logan felt his heart turn over completely. "We did it," Zara said softly. "We made this perfect little person." "You did most of the work," Logan pointed out. "I just paced and worried." Zara laughed weakly. "Well, you are very good at worrying. But Logan, look at her. Look at what we've created together. Out of pain and fear and desperation, we found love. And now we have this beautiful result of that love." Logan kissed Zara's temple, careful not to jostle the baby. "I never thought I would have this. A wife, a child, a real family. I thought I was meant to be alone." "You were never meant to be alone," Zara said firmly. "You were just waiting for us to find you." "I found you," Logan corrected, "in the middle of a storm, chained to a wagon wheel. And you broke those chains with your bare hands like some kind of hero from a storybook." Zara smiled up at him. "My mountain man. My miracle." "No," Logan said, looking from Zara to Sarah and back again. "You are the miracles, both of you. You are everything I never knew I needed." They stayed like that for a long time, the three of them together in the bed, a new family forged from the most unlikely circumstances. Outside, spring was blooming across the mountains, bringing new life and new possibilities. Martha proved to be invaluable in those first few days after Sarah's birth. She showed Logan how to change and swaddle the baby, how to soothe her when she cried, how to support Zara as she recovered. By the time Martha left to return to her own home, Logan felt marginally more confident in his abilities as a father. "You are going to be fine," Martha assured him as she prepared to leave. "Just love them and protect them, which you already do. The rest will come naturally." "Thank you, Martha, for everything." "It was my pleasure. That baby girl is lucky to have you both." Martha hugged Zara carefully. "You take care and come visit when you are feeling stronger. The ladies of Hangtown are already planning a party to welcome little Sarah." After Martha left, Logan and Zara settled into the rhythms of new parenthood. It was exhausting and overwhelming and absolutely wonderful. Logan discovered he had a talent for soothing Sarah when she was fussy, his deep voice and gentle rocking almost always calming her cries. Zara recovered quickly from the birth, her natural resilience and youth serving her well. Within a few weeks, she was back to her normal activities, though Logan insisted she take it easy and let him handle the heavier work. As summer came to the mountains, bringing warm days and cool nights, the little family flourished. Sarah grew from a tiny newborn into a chubby, happy baby with her mother's gray eyes and her father's dark hair. She smiled early, and Logan was completely wrapped around her tiny finger. "You spoil her," Zara accused with amusement, watching Logan bounce Sarah on his knee for the 10th time in an hour just to hear her laugh. "She is my daughter. I'm supposed to spoil her," Logan replied, unrepentant. They made regular trips to Hangtown now, Sarah strapped to Logan's chest in a carrier Zara had sewn. The townspeople doted on the baby, and Logan found himself becoming part of a community for the first time in his adult life. It felt strange but good. Sam Hastings had become a good friend, often inviting Logan to share a meal or a drink when they were in town. Martha and Zara had formed a close bond, and several other women had welcomed Zara into their circle as well. One afternoon in late summer, Logan was sitting outside the general store with Sam while Zara visited with Martha inside. "You seem happy," Sam observed, puffing on his pipe. "Happier than I have ever seen you." "I am," Logan admitted. "I did not know life could be like this, Sam. Every morning I wake up and I see Zara and Sarah, and I cannot believe they are real, that they are mine." "You earned it, Logan. After what you did for that girl, saving her life and giving her a home, you earned every bit of happiness you have got." "I do not think of it as earning anything. I think of it as the luckiest day of my life, the day I found her." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the activity on the street. Then Sam spoke again. "Did you hear? Frank Coleman died last month." Logan tensed. "What happened?" "Liver finally gave out from all that drinking. He was found dead in a boarding house in Sacramento. No one claimed the body." Sam looked at Logan. "Does Zara know?" "No. I will tell her when the time is right." Logan felt a complex mix of emotions. Relief, mostly, that the man could never threaten Zara or Sarah again, but also a strange sadness for a wasted life. He could have had a family, could have treasured his niece instead of trying to destroy her. "Some people are just broken inside," Sam said philosophically. "But you gave his story a better ending than it deserved. You gave Zara a good life, a family, real love. That is more than Frank Coleman ever did for anyone." Logan nodded slowly. "I will tell her tonight." When they returned to the cabin that evening, Logan did tell Zara about her uncle's death. She was quiet for a long moment, holding Sarah close. "I should feel something," she finally said. "Grief or anger or something. But all I feel is relief that he can never hurt us." "That is natural," Logan assured her. "He gave up any claim to your love or grief when he left you to die." "I know. It is just strange to think that a person I am related to is gone, and I feel nothing." Zara looked up at Logan. "Does that make me a bad person?" "No," Logan said firmly, pulling her close with his free arm. "It makes you human, and it means you understand that family is not just about blood. It is about love and loyalty and protection. We are your family now, me and Sarah. That is all that matters." "You are right." Zara leaned against him, and they stood like that for a while, the three of them together, a tight unit against the world. As Sarah's first birthday approached, Logan and Zara began talking about the future in more concrete terms. "I have been thinking," Logan said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "Maybe it is time we build a bigger cabin. Sarah is growing, and if we have more children—" "When we have more children," Zara corrected with a smile. "When we have more children," Logan agreed, his heart warming at the certainty in her voice. "We will need more space, and I have been doing well with my trapping. We could afford to build something nice." "I would like that," Zara said. "Not too fancy, but big enough for a growing family, with a real kitchen and maybe a separate bedroom for the children." They spent the next few weeks planning and preparing. Logan marked out a site not far from the existing cabin and began felling trees. Several men from town came up to help with the actual construction, turning it into a community project. By late autumn, the new cabin was finished. It was twice the size of the original, with a large main room, a separate bedroom for Logan and Zara, and a loft where the children could sleep when they were old enough. There was a proper kitchen area and even a covered porch that wrapped around two sides. "It is beautiful," Zara said, walking through the empty rooms with Sarah on her hip. "It is a real home, Logan." "It is our home," Logan corrected, pulling her close, "built with love for our family." They moved in just before the first snowfall, and the cabin quickly filled with the sounds and smells of family life. Sarah took her first steps that winter, and Logan and Zara celebrated every milestone with joy and pride. By the time spring returned again, Zara was pregnant with their second child. Logan was just as nervous and protective as he had been the first time, maybe more so because he knew what to expect. But the pregnancy progressed smoothly, and in early summer, Zara gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Jacob, after Logan's father, and Logan cried when he held his son for the first time. To have not just one but two children, a daughter and a son, it was more than he had ever dared to dream. Sarah was fascinated by her new brother, always wanting to help care for him. Logan and Zara watched their children with hearts full of love, marveling at the family they had built together. The years passed in a blur of happiness. Logan continued his trapping and hunting, but he also started doing other work, guiding parties through the mountains, scouting for settlements, even some blacksmith work that he had learned as a young man. They were not wealthy, but they were comfortable, and more importantly, they were happy. Sarah grew into a bright, adventurous child who loved the mountains as much as her father did. Logan taught her to track and hunt and respect the wilderness. Jacob was quieter, but equally sharp, with a gift for working with his hands that reminded Logan of his own father. 2 more children followed, another girl they named Emily, and finally another boy they named Samuel after Sam Hastings, who had become like a grandfather to their growing brood. The cabin that had once seemed so spacious now rang with the sound of children's laughter and arguments. Logan added onto it twice more, creating even more bedrooms and expanding the main living area. Their home became known as a welcoming place, with friends from town often stopping by for meals or just to visit. Logan sometimes found it hard to believe this was his life, that the lonely mountain man who had found a woman chained in a storm now had a wife he adored and 4 healthy children who filled his days with chaos and joy. "Do you ever miss it?" Zara asked him one night when the children were finally asleep and they had a rare moment of quiet together. "The solitude, the simple life you had before?" Logan thought about it seriously, wanting to give her an honest answer. "Sometimes I miss the quiet," he admitted, "but I would not trade this life for anything. Before you, I was just existing, not really living. You and the children gave me purpose, gave me joy, gave me reasons to wake up every morning." "I feel the same way," Zara said softly. "You saved me, Logan, not just from the chains and the storm, but from a life of despair. You gave me love and a family and a home. You gave me everything." "We saved each other," Logan said, pulling her into his arms. "That night in the storm, we both found what we were looking for, even if we did not know we were looking for it." They sat together on the porch, watching the stars come out over the mountains, comfortable in the silence that comes from years of shared life. Inside the cabin, their children slept safely, dreaming their children dreams. As Sarah approached her 16th birthday, Logan began to notice young men from town paying attention to his daughter. It made him growl like a bear with a sore paw, much to Zara's amusement. "She is growing up, Logan. You cannot protect her from everything forever." "I can try," Logan muttered darkly, glaring at a young man who had the audacity to wave at Sarah from across the street. But even Logan had to admit that Sarah was becoming a fine young woman, smart, capable, and strong. She reminded him so much of her mother at that age, and he knew he would have to let her make her own choices eventually. Jacob, at 14, was already nearly as tall as Logan and showed promise of being just as broad. He worked alongside his father on the trap lines and was developing into a skilled craftsman. Emily, at 11, was the wild child of the family, always climbing trees and catching frogs and giving her parents heart attacks. And little Samuel, at 8, was the peacemaker, always trying to keep his siblings from fighting. "We did well," Zara said to Logan one evening as they watched their children help with the evening chores. "Look at them, strong, healthy, happy. We gave them a good life." "You gave them a good life," Logan corrected. "I just provided the cabin and the food. You gave them everything else, the love, the guidance, the education." "We did it together," Zara insisted, taking his hand. "Everything we have, everything we are, we built it together." On their 20th wedding anniversary, the whole town of Hangtown helped them celebrate. Sam Hastings, now an old man but still sharp as ever, gave a toast that brought tears to Logan's eyes. 20 years ago, Logan Yates came into my store with a young woman who had been through hell. I watched him marry her that same day, and I thought to myself, that is either the smartest or the stupidest thing that man has ever done. Well, I am here to say it was the smartest. Logan and Zara have built something beautiful together, a family, a life, a love that anyone would be lucky to have. Here is to 20 more years. The crowd cheered and drank, and Logan pulled Zara close, kissing her soundly to the delight of their children and the whistles of their friends. 20 years, Logan murmured against her lips. 20 years since I found you in that storm. 20 years since you broke those chains and saved my life, Zara replied. Best day of my life. Mine too, Logan agreed. Every day with you has been a gift, Zara. Every single day. As they grew older, Logan's hair turned gray, and his body showed the wear of a hard life in the mountains. But he remained strong, still capable of felling trees and tracking game. Zara's beauty matured with age, her face showing lines of laughter and love. They watched their children grow into adults and start families of their own. Sarah married a kind young man from Hangtown and gave them their first grandchildren. Jacob built his own cabin not far from his parents and continued the family tradition of mountain living. Emily, true to her wild nature, married a prospector and moved to the Nevada territories. And Samuel became a teacher, fulfilling Zara's dream of having an educated child who could help others. Through it all, Logan and Zara remained each other's constant companions and truest loves. They never tired of each other's company, never stopped finding joy in the small moments of daily life. "Do you remember the night we met?" Zara asked one evening, many years later. They were sitting on their porch, watching the sunset over the mountains they had called home for so long. "Every detail," Logan replied, his voice rough with age but still strong. "The rain, the darkness, your cries for help. The way you looked at me when I broke those chains, terrified and hopeful all at once." "I thought you were a miracle sent from God," Zara said with a soft smile. "A mountain man strong enough to break iron with his bare hands and gentle enough to bandage my wrists without hurting me." "I thought you were the bravest person I had ever met," Logan replied. "Chained to a wagon wheel, left to die, and still fighting to survive, still choosing to trust a stranger in the darkness." "We saved each other that night," Zara said, repeating the words they had spoken to each other so many times over the years. "You saved me from the storm, and I saved you from loneliness." "Best trade I ever made," Logan said, making her laugh. They sat in comfortable silence, holding hands as they had done for decades. Their children were grown with families of their own. Their grandchildren were starting to have children. The legacy they had built together continued to grow and flourish. "Logan," Zara said softly. "Yes, my love." "I would do it all again. Every moment, every hardship, every joy. I would do it all again to have this life with you." Logan brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "So would I. 1,000 times over, I would break those chains and bring you home. You are my home, Zara. You always have been." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Logan and Zara Yates sat together on their porch, surrounded by the mountains that had witnessed their love story. A story that began with a desperate cry in a storm and a man brave enough to answer. A story that bloomed into a lifetime of love, family, and happiness. The chain marks on Zara's wrists had faded long ago, replaced by the wedding ring Logan had placed there on that hasty day in Hangtown. But the memory of that night remained forever fresh, the night Logan Yates had found her chained to a wagon wheel in the rain and had broken the iron with his bare hands. The night their life together truly began. And as they sat together in the peaceful evening, watching the mountains they loved turn purple in the fading light, both of them knew they had found something precious and rare. They had found a love that transcended the circumstances of their meeting, a love that had grown stronger with each passing year, a love that would endure until their final days. It was a love story for the ages, born in the Wild West, forged in hardship, and tempered by devotion. A mountain man and the woman he saved, building a life together that exceeded their wildest dreams, and they lived happily ever after, just as they deserved.